Pennsylvania. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all, both those who are here in person and those who are joining us online. If you're here on Zoom, we're asking you to turn off your microphones now and please leave them off until coffee hour. And please rise in body, voice, or spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, number 1000, Morning Has Come. The words will be in your teal hymnal and posted on screen. Unitarian Universalist Church of Indiana. I'm Sarah Steelman, a member of the Worship Services Committee, and I'm here because one of the things that I like best about our church is the celebration of our pagan traditions and the way in which we understand them in relation to more recent theological beliefs and developments. On behalf of the entire congregation, I welcome you here this morning, whether in person, on Zoom, or by our YouTube connection. If you are here for the first time, welcome. Please take a moment to fill out a blue visitor's card. You can find one in your hymnal or in the entryway. This will help us make sure you receive information about our church's programs and services. Joining us online, send an email to office@firstuu-indiana.org become connected to our newsletter. On Zoom, please note the chat button below the video screen and for our greetings, chalice lightings, and for joys and concerns during the service. Our church is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are a self-governing congregation united in a web of mutuality that creates our denomination. We have no creed or doctrine, teaching that all individuals have the right and the responsibility to discern and follow their own spiritual paths. We come together to support and assist one another on our journeys and to build our beloved community together. I invite you to stay after the service to greet one another and rejoice in our mutual presence. We will open up the microphones on Zoom for coffee hour, and folks here in person are welcome to greet those joining us electronically at that time as well. We have several special announcements. First, the adult Bible class that's been requested begins on Tuesday nights starting March 29th on Zoom. If you've been planning to sign up, email Reverend Elizabeth this week. And we also have a short announcement on of our Faithify campaign from Tina Perez, one of our board members. Oh, sorry, wrong name. Tina Perdue.
Hi, everybody. As you all know, we've been running this Faithify campaign in order to close the gap between 75% and 80% position until we can figure out, tap into some money for next year to start that 80% position. So you may have noticed I've been kind of yammering all over our Facebook page over the last week. And the reason is that what I see is that we have two futures before us. Neither one of them is very bad, or you know, one of them is really great and one of them is okay. The future over the next year for us, quite honestly, could be the likeliest one, is that we don't get a minister this year, even if we reach the $3,500, you know, that there's nobody out there who would rise to the challenge that we're setting for them, you know. But so what? If that's the case, we went down fighting, okay? And it wouldn't be all that awful. I mean, yeah, we'd probably have to mount a new search for a settled minister, and we'd have to, you know, get some people from outside to come once or twice a month to do services for us. But we could do it. We've done it before. We can do it again. All right, and it'd only be for a year. But I don't really want to do that. And that's why I'm all over Facebook, because I think the future that we have, if we get this $3,500 and there's somebody out there who is like, yeah, what the heck? I like the way this congregation rolls. I'd like to grow with them, you know. Heck of a person would be my guess, you know, and that would be a much more exciting future where we've got somebody, we're rolling into gear and reaching back out into the community in ways we haven't been able to, thanks to COVID and various other things, and just finally we'd be going into the future that we have chosen to go into. And that's why I'm all over Facebook. And that's why I'm asking everybody here, not necessarily to donate yourselves. I understand. Lots of us are strapped. We have been stretched. But to reach out to your friends, okay? Because I've done that, and it scared the hell out of me, to be quite blunt. But I've gotten a couple of really sweet responses and about $130 from my outreach. So
email your friends, go to the communities that you have, been active in, and you'd be surprised. They'll be like, oh, this would be Yes, I like this church. I want it to do well. I can pitch in 20, 50, even $100. One of my people pitched in 100. So that's my announcement.
All right.
The call to worship is The Easter Flower by Claude Mckay. Far from this foreign Easter damp and chilly, my soul stills to a pear-shaped plot of ground where gleamed a lilac-tinted Easter lily. Soft scented the air for yards around. Alone, without a hint of guardian leaf, just like a fragile bell of silver rhyme. It burst a tune for freedom, sweet and brief, in the young pregnant year at Easter time. And many thought it was a sacred sign, and some called it the resurrection flower. And I, a pagan, worshiped at its shrine, yielding my heart unto its perfumed power.
Now, let us light our chalice flame. On Zoom, you may type, "The flame is lit," and say where you are joining us from in the chat bar. If you take a look at your order of service, you'll see that there's a verse to the chalice lighting, and then we ask everyone to join in for the last 4 lines. As the first hint of green begins to peek through the barren ground, as that little sprig grows into a healthy stem, as that stem grows into a stalk and forms a bud, as that bud slowly opens with each new day to form a yellow daffodil. Let us be like that first hint of green, renewed by the warmth of the sun's rays and ready to emerge with a new energy, ready to face the day. We light this chalice to bring a glimmer of that warmth into our space. And now, Penny Vic Hendricks is going to share our story for all ages.
Good morning. Good morning. So in pagan traditions, when people begin a worship, it is a custom to create a circle of all the people who are participating, somewhat like we do in religious exploration in our classes, when we all enter and make a circle with our chairs. However, pagan people are people who believe strongly in the sacredness of the earth. Many of us believe that the earth exists as something special, but pagan worshipers believe that there is a part of the earth that is aware and responds to us and to what we do upon the earth. So when pagans create a circle for worship, they call to the elements to let them know that a sacred time is about to begin, and to invite the spirits of the gods and the goddesses to come and be part of that worship and to enjoy it as well. One way to do this is to note the 4 directions of the compass: north, east, south, and west, and invite the elements of earth, air, fire, and water, which go with them to be with us. Today, we have a hymnal that does this for our congregational worship. As we sing hymn 1067, Mother Earth, Beloved Garden, you might listen for the ways that each element is described and think about that, what element feels like in your own. Do you feel solid and healing like the earth? Inspiring and creative like the clear air? Are you feeling warm and energetic like fire? Or are you playful and ever-changing like water? So now, let us open our hymnals to 1067, Mother Earth, Beloved Garden, and sing together. If anyone would like to call upon a particular element, you are welcome to move and stand to the north, back of the sanctuary, for earth, east for air, south for fire, west the water, while we sing.
Of the sun in our hearts, your warmth
Breathe in the balance. Here between night and day, between winter's chill and summer's swelter, pause and listen to the crocus moving up from the ground, to the ice melting into flow, to Gaia crying, to the Fae dying, to your own soul sighing. We stand on a razor's edge, one false move and we fall, one leap of faith and we can soar. At twilight, at the equinox, pause for a moment and listen. During our centering music, if you have joys or sorrows you would like spoken aloud, please write them in the chat online or on a note card and place it in the basket in the sanctuary to be woven into our shared pastoral prayer.
an essay by Victoria Safford called Trees for Starters. A child in our Sunday school was overheard to say about his church, I don't know the name of it, but where we go, we're really interested in trees. All of us believe in trees. His mother called shortly afterward to report his unusual confession of faith and to see whether we thought it was time to supplement her boy's understanding with a more comprehensive Unitarian Universalist theology. I don't know if there is a more comprehensive Unitarian Universalist theology. All of us believe in trees. Like my young comrade, the little Buddha back in New York State, I've always been very interested in trees, meaning I have always, as far back as I can remember, had a spiritual orientation that unfolds itself, reveals itself outside and inside, and it cannot be contained within any single book or creed or building or tradition, and it cannot respond, and never has, to small-minded anthropomorphic gods in beards or turbans or suits and ties. These deities who are larger than life, but smaller than soul. They have never spoken to me in words I can understand. Even as a tiny girl singing, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so, I remember thinking, maybe there is a Jesus and maybe there is an embracing love, immortal, invisible, radiating through the cosmos, touching even me. But if there is, it cannot be because the Bible tells me so. It must be deeper, older, wider, wilder, more reliable than that. I remember wanting those sky gods to rise up from their thrones and become little birds, flying up beyond the sky to fix themselves as stars, or fluttering down to earth, spilling down as drops of rain splashing on my hand. Even as a child, I knew, and perhaps more clearly then, a throne is no place for God. Which is not to say that I was deaf, for I was not, to all the stories, songs, and psalms, the mysteries and ethical teachings out of all those traditions of the West and of the East, which do speak to my heart and open it continuously, including absolutely Jesus and the radical love, agape, at the core of Christian mysticism, absolutely, and why not? But for me, these are just windows through which we can gaze upon and perhaps apprehend the secret. They are not the thing itself. Even stars and water, even trees are not quite the thing itself. But we seek it. And now I invite you to join me in reading aloud our shared UU principles, which may be found in your order of service or on your screen. We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, with the goal of world unity, peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect of all existence, of which we are part. We now offer a time of silence during which you are invited to come forward to light a candle of intention to represent a joy or sorrow, concern or celebration in your life. If you have not already done so, you may hand your written joy or sorrow to me as you light your candle.
Let us join our hearts and minds together now in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, we gather together to share in community these milestones of our living. A gratitude from Amanda. My sister is in recovery from surgery, and her journey has reminded me how precious life is and how important our loved ones are in caring for each other. And there's a joy for the first day of spring, which, let's see if it happened yet. Yes, the equinox is just happening now, 10 after 11. I'm so glad for the increased daylight. And we offer more prayers for peace in the Ukraine. May the people there find hope in the midst of fear, love in the places where people go to hide or fight. May there be moments of good humor, even when hardship surrounds. And may all people see humanity in one another and choose peace, even when it takes great courage. For the blessings of our lives, may we be truly grateful for the beauty of the earth, the changing seasons, and the flowing gift of life. May we give thanks. In times of fragile hearts and tender sorrows, may we find comfort and strength. May our hearts be healed. May we be filled with peace.
At the First UU Church of Indiana, we share the plate by giving a portion of every week's donations to an organization outside the church. This is part of our congregation's mission to promote compassionate and responsible thought and action in the world by giving back to the community around us every week. So when you give this morning, know that you are making an impact not only for this congregation, but also in the wider community through our shared giving. Our congregational giving this month benefits the Care Center of Indiana County, which originally began providing services in the 1970s in Indiana, PA, under the name Parents Anonymous. From that start, they have become a child abuse prevention agency with advocacy, parent support, and education at the forefront of their work. Today, the CARE name stands for Child Advocacy and Relationship Enhancing and symbolizes care for the child, the parents, and the needs of the family. The child is always at the center of all of their services as the Care Center's staff members work to enhance relationships between parents and children. As a congregation, we have said our greatest justice work is the nurturing of children into compassionate and responsible adults. We are glad to give both within and beyond our walls, supporting families as we build a better world. Please give as generously as you are able to the work of this church as we share in singing our offertory hymn, number 402, From You I Receive. Josiah.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this we live.
Samhain and All Saints' Day, Lunasa and the Blessing of Bread, Beltane and Saint Walpurgis Day, Imbolc and the Mass to bless holy candles, Mabon and the Feast of the Archangels, and of course, Yule and Christmas. So many of the Christian and pagan holy days correspond. It has to be more than coincidence. This has led many pagans, including myself at one time, to accuse the Catholic Church of stealing the days from the pagans. I have even seen memes and a t-shirt that depict a Franciscan monk pulling a cart full of things like decorated pine trees, holly branches, decorated eggs, mistletoe, and bunnies, with the caption, "For a religion that condemns pagans, you sure stole a lot of our stuff." Okay, I still think it's funny, but like many of the memes online, not entirely accurate. One such meme that I am thankfully seeing less of over the years is the one claiming that the word Easter is taken from the name of the goddess Ishtar, and that the correct pronunciation of Ishtar is Easter. That, of course, is not true. Ishtar is pronounced Ishtar, just like it's spelled. Also, contrary to what that meme says, Ishtar was not connected with hares or eggs. Equally fictitious, the post spread the idea that Constantine, in the 4th century, created the holiday of Easter. But the Christian holiday was already established by the 2nd century and was known as Pescha, not Easter. This was over 200 years before Constantine. There is some evidence that the word Easter is related to another goddess, the Anglo-Saxon goddess Ostra, goddess of the dawn. The problem is, we know very little about her. It was the Venerable Bede who wrote in the 8th century, Ostra month, which is now interpreted as the Paschal month, was formerly called Ostra and celebrated in that month. Now the Paschal season is called by this name, calling the joys of the new festival by the ancient name of old. This is the only evidence that we have that there was a pagan festival called Ostra. Before the 8th century, in most of England, the celebration of Christ's resurrection was called Pescha, from the Latin name for the Jewish Passover. It wasn't until the 1800s that Jacob Grimm, the guy from the fairy tales, reconstructed the goddess Ostra or Ostara, speculating from the name of the Christian holiday, the German word Ostermott, which was the name for April, and from Easter traditions such as bonfires and gathering waters on the equinox. The reconstructed goddess's connection to the East and spring comes from ties to the Indo-European word os, meaning to shine. From this, we know that there was an Anglo-Saxon goddess named Ostra, who had a holiday celebrated for her around the time of Easter or Pascha, but basically nothing else. So we appear to have a case of the new religion's holiday being called by the name of the old one, in part due to a coincidence of timing. The idea of the Easter bunny, originally hares, cannot be dated back further than the mid-1500s, and the idea of Easter eggs to the 1600s. In 1682, George Frank von Frankenau, I keep wanting to call him Frankenstein for some reason, Frankenau is the first to explicitly mention the rabbit bringing eggs in his work, De Ovis Pasculolibus. That's Latin, is really hard for me, where he describes the folk practice. The Easter egg is more likely connected to the Jewish tradition of having an egg on the Passover Seder plate. Eggs were also on the list of prohibited foods for Lent, so it makes sense that people would feast on them at Easter. I am a pagan and a witch, and have been since the early 90s. I have seen the fads and trends of these spiritual traditions shift over the years. My own practice has evolved over the years too. I started out in a largely Wiccan practice. And Wicca is a pagan religion, and it is a major influence on the larger pagan community. The Wiccan spiritual calendar, known as the Wheel of the Year, is the basis of the holidays I mentioned earlier. Wicca is still the faith of a large majority of people who call themselves witches today. But a quickly growing witchcraft path, or actually group of paths, is called traditional witchcraft. This movement has begun to look at folklore and folk magic traditions, such as the cunning folk or the fairy doctors, for inspiration. It is more concerned with practical magical workings and less interested in the religious aspects. But it is also not afraid to acknowledge the influences of Christianity on the craft over the years. Much of the old magical practice shows a wonderful blending of pagan and Christian. For example, a protective spell, which I have done at my own house, from the old lore involves hanging a horseshoe above the front door of your house using 3 nails. And as you do, you chant, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, nail the devil to the post. Thrice I strike with holy crook, once for God, once for wad, once for luck. The invocation of the Trinity is clearly Christian, and the reference to God is most likely also Christian. But what of wad and look? Well, these are references to the Anglo-Saxon gods, Woden and Loki, which is very interesting because both are, Woden is like order and Loki is chaos. So you're bringing the influence of both of those to the spell working. One of my favorite bits of lore is the idea that the time from Good Friday until sunrise on Easter is the time to implore curses, hexes, and other maledictions. The idea was that since Jesus was dead and in the underworld during this time, he couldn't see the evil things that we were doing. I know it may seem silly, but it speaks to the kind of pagan mentality which sees the mist as being cyclical. The Oak King and the Holly King fight every year. Persephone spends winter in the underworld every year. So why wouldn't Christ's death and resurrection be similarly repetitive? With more and more people converting to pagan practice, there is even a growing group that fashions themselves as Christo-pagans and see no problem with holding both faiths in their heart. Now, I must admit, when I first heard this concept, it seemed a bit strange and maybe a little bit too new agey for me. But as my own practices have evolved, I realize that Christo-pagan may apply to me. I can't help but have been influenced by my past and my experiences with Christianity. And so I began the exploration of Christo-paganism with the angels and moved on from there. As a witch and a practitioner of a nature-based faith, I can't help speculating about pagans during the persecutions. No conversion of a group of people is really instantaneous. There is a time of transition where the former beliefs blend with the beliefs of the new faith. I imagine them spending the night under the full moon, the first full moon of spring, worshiping the goddess of the dawn, and then coming weeks or days or weeks later into the church at Easter time. How might they have interpreted the image of the woman clothed in gold with a child in her arms? How may they have viewed the slain God and the story of his resurrection? Did they see their goddess of the dawn and the Son of God in that one image? Did they see their pantheon's deities in the saints and the angels? It's not hard to imagine that they did. For someone who is pagan, I probably have a larger collection of Catholic artwork than most of my friends, or even who are or were raised as Catholic. I have the 4 archangels on my healing altar, and Mary is there as their queen. I have St. Francis beside Kuan Yin on my kitchen windowsill. The infant Jesus of Prague stands blessing me from my entertainment center beside a statue of the Witch Father. One of my mentors in the craft once said, "A witch should be able to walk into any temple and be comfortable." I try to live up to that. I have only half-jokingly called myself a freelance mystic. Perhaps that is why I found my place here among the Unitarian Universalists, among my fellow heretics. So, are all these customs, folk customs of rabbits and eggs, carryovers from pagan practice? Perhaps, probably. But I think more likely is that these traditions spring from a common well that is older even than paganism or religion. This is a time when the earth is returning to life after the long stagnant winter. Birds are laying eggs like crazy at this time. Hares are acting wild as the mating season begins. Flowers are beginning to push through the soil. It is a time of fertility and resurrections. So whether it is the goddess Demeter rejoicing at the return of her daughter Persephone, or Jesus returning from the dead, or the Israelites released from captivity, it makes sense that all of these should be celebrated at this time of year. I see no reason to choose. I celebrate Ostara and Easter with equal joy. To quote from Morgan Daimler and her excellent blog post about Ostara, while these practices and names may or may not originally be pagan, why does it matter? These are fun folk customs that we can practice today. So let's stop arguing over whose holiday is whose and what traditions belong to who. Color an egg, make a little nest for the Ostra hare and put the eggs in it. Jump a bonfire and have a great holiday, whichever one you choose.
Our closing hymn is a beautiful celebration of the joy of spring, founded on one of the loveliest themes that Beethoven ever wrote. And I invite you to stand and join in singing hymn number 327, Joy Thou Goddess, from our gray hymnal. The words will be in the hymnal, or we hope on the screen.
Joy thou goddess, fair immortal offspring of Elysium, led with rapture to the portal of thy holy fane we come. Fashion's law indeed may sever, but thy magic joins again. Humankind is one forever, neath thy mild and gentle reign. Joy in nature's wide dominion, mightiest cause of all is found, and 'tis joy that moves and pinion when the wheel of time goes round. From the bud she lures the flowers, some from all the orbs of light. 'Tis the spirit of the power, loving on the mortal sight.
Traditional in pagan practice, since we called the elements in at the beginning to release them. And so I found this releasing the archangels, and it identifies each of the four archangels as one of the elements. So we'll begin with Earth in the north. Hail to Uriel, archangel of Earth. Blessing to the guardian of the north. We give you thanks for coming here to bring stability and banish fear. Return now to your peaks and hills. Thanks for righting curses and ills. Archangel of Earth, we give thanks to thee. Guardian of the north, blessed be. Hail and farewell.
Hail to Gabriel, archangel of water. Blessings to the guardian of the west. Thank you for helping our sacred rite for the gift of perception and second sight. Return now to the streams and tides. The negative is banished, joy abides. Archangel of water, we give thanks to thee. Guardian of the west, blessed be. Hail and farewell.
Hail to Mckay, archangel of fire. Blessings to the guardian of the south. You stood with us with flame and steel. You banished the darkness with power real. Return now to the sacred fire. Your inspiration to us shall not expire. Archangel of fire, we give thanks to thee. Guardian of the south, blessed be. Hail and farewell.
Hail to Raphael, Archangel of air. Blessings to the guardian of the east. Thank you for aiding this cleansing rite against malevolent spirits you helped us fight. Return now to the skies above, remembering our gratitude, praise, and love. Archangel of air, we give thanks to thee. Guardian of the east, blessed be. Hail and farewell.
I invite you to join in saying together our words to extinguish the chalice. We extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Blessed be.